Welcome to UGC EPG Pathshala. Hello, I am Dr. Poonam Sharma, Associate Professor teaching Geography in Shahid Bhagat Singh College, University of Delhi. Today, I will talk about energy flow in ecosystem. Friends, the main objective of this chapter includes the following. We'll learn about ecosystem, the concept of energy, the transformations of energy, energy in ecological system, energy availability and distribution, geophysical paths of energy, organic path of energy, energy flow and efficiency. To discuss the energy flow in ecosystem, let us first understand the concept of ecosystem. The organisms, the plants, the microbes all exist in interdependence of each other with different life forms are called biotic community. The peculiar type of biotic community that develops or witnessed in an area is fundamentally determined by the abiotic non-living factors. These abiotic factors include all physical, chemical aspects of a region which act both as support as well as limitations to the biota. These non-biological or abiotic factors include climatic components such as sunlight, temperature, air, moisture, salinity and soil nutrients, which are significantly contributing factors of the ecosystem function. The basic organizational unit of the complex web of life and their biotic conditions that it live in is called ecosystem. In other words, ecosystem is a functional categorization of plants, animals, microbes that dwell in an explicit unit of space, interrelated and interact with each other and also with their environment to reproduce and to continue to sustain. Ecosystems are nearly self-contained so that the exchange of nutrients within the system is much greater than exchange with the other systems. There are no distinct boundaries in the ecosystem. From one type to another, there is a transition from steady decrease of life forms and habitat to gradual increase to the next type of life niche. In fact, many species occupy or move in more than one habitat, for example, migratory birds. These transitional regions are called ecotones, which have a unique natural setting that gives them distinctive characteristics. Thus, a pond, a wetland, a marsh, a forest, an island, a desert, a grassland, and so on is a specific ecosystem with its peculiar life forms and physical environment complementing each other. All ecosystems have their own set of determining factors. Terrestrial ecosystems work with different environment while aquatic ecosystem work with its own settings. It is interesting to witness that within this broad category there are subsets. For example, within aquatic there are oceans, coastal oceans, estuaries, inland wetlands, rivers, lakes and ponds. Ecosystems can be seen in different scale such as micro level, for example, a pond, under a rock or a tree trunk. The medium level includes a large forest or sea, and biomes are the massive ecosystems or group of similar ecosystems. Whether it is the major category of ecosystem or a subset ecosystem all are unified and interdependent. All biotas share the same atmosphere, the same land, the same hydrological circulations, leading to one whole unified ecosystem called biosphere. The ecosystems are foundations for biosphere. If you look at the organizational setup of the ecosystem, it is clearly seen a layered structure appears. This includes from the individual species leading to community, to the ecosystem, to biomes, and finally to the one unified whole, that is the biosphere as seen in the given figure 1. The basic concept of ecosystem is actually an energy system which constitutes different groups or levels of organisms. It appears to be as a complete supply chain system or production line system of nature working in its own unique automotive mechanism. Each level of organism depends on the previous level for energy, the food supply. For example, herbivores on plants and carnivores on herbivores. The ecosystem connections among the producers, various levels of consumers, that is primary, secondary and tertiary, with the consumers at the bottom and higher order tertiary consumers at the top, sets the basic energy flow. The higher order consumers' energy requirement to sustain and reproduce put a huge demand on producers. The three major categories of ecosystems based on the kind of environment are terrestrial, saltwater, freshwater, and under this broad classification, numerous subsystems that are interdependent, interconnected and overlapping exist. For proper functioning, these ecosystems depend on the supplies of basic ingredient such as solar energy, heat, water and nutrients, and many other external environmental factors as well. This implies that various small or big systems are able to generate huge amount of resources from their environment, mainly the light energy, and transformations of it into organic matter. Now, let us try to understand the meaning of energy with the reference to ecosystem. Energy. Let us understand the concept first. The universe is made up of matter and energy. In terms of defining the words, matter is anything that occupies space and has mass. This implies anything that can be weighed is in the presence of gravity. Therefore, it includes all liquids, gases and solids, biotic and abiotic components of ecosystem. A solid have a definite shape and a mass. A liquid have mass but takes the shape of the container. And gases have mass but no shape. Energy in its various forms is the ability to work and it moves the matter. Energy is categorized in two major types generally, that is kinetic and potential energy. Kinetic energy is energy in motion, for example, light, heat, electric current or any physical motion. Potential energy is stored energy Potential energy is stored energy. Thus, a material or a system or a structure stored energy and has potential or capability to release one or more forms of kinetic energy. For example, various petroleum fuels releases kinetic energy to put vehicles or a machine to move. Stored energy in batteries or stretched elastic to throw a stone, etc. Here, I am going to explain you about different forms of energy. The broad categorization of forms of energy is of two types, that includes kinetic and potential, as you have just seen. This is further divided into subcategories, that is chemical, electrical, mechanical, thermal, magnetic, nuclear and radiant energy. Chemical energy is stored in the bonds of chemical substance and later released from potential to kinetic. For example, fuel molecules. Electric energy results from movement of charged particles. For example, electric current which flows in our homes. Mechanical energy is involved in the physical movement of any matter, for example, pushing a table or pedaling a bicycle. Radiant energy is energy of electromagnetic spectrum. It travels in waves, for example, X-rays, infrared, radio waves, etc. The radiant energy is in the form of electromagnetic waves which are released from the sun during the transformation of hydrogen to helium. It constitutes the fundamental source of energy. The basic supply of energy is an essential requisite by all life forms is the chemical energy of their food. The chemical energy is acquired by the conversion of the radiant energy of sun, which is stored in the food of living organisms, is converted into potential energy by the constituent atoms of food in a particular manner. The figure 2 explains how different forms of energy are being converted to another form. Energy is neither created nor destroyed. It may be changed from one form to another in numerous parts, but the total energy in the universe remains the same. It may transform from radiant energy to chemical energy, from chemical to mechanical energy, from kinetic to potential energy, and from potential to kinetic, and variety of other pathways. For example, the figure 3 describes how variety of energy transformations are taking place. Here, you are going to learn about how energy transformations are taking place. The energy transformations or change of form from one to another are in fact based on energy laws known as laws of thermodynamics. In the following lines, I am going to talk about the two energy laws. The first law of thermodynamics, which is also called the law of conservation of energy, which states that energy is neither created nor destroyed, rather it is only transformed from one form to another. Thus, if energy form compared at reception point, how much it is consumed to the end point, the total produced energy in its various forms would be equal. The second law of thermodynamics, which is also referred as entropy, says that in the process of energy conversions, parts of usable energy inevitably is lost. Entropy here implies the degree of imperfections or faults or degradations in the ecosystem that leads to this loss of usable energy. In each conversion stage, some energy is lost as heat. Thus, the energy flow from higher to lower levels, this implies that the capacity of energy to work is reduced in the process of transformations. The figure 4 illustrates how radiation energy from the sun gets converted into organic energy, the chemical energy from the fuels to kinetic energy for vehicles, the electric energy to the light energy in the bulb, chemical energy of the fruits to kinetic energy for human, and electric energy of heat in case of cattle. For there are some examples, heat in and electric energy to heat in case of cattle. These are some examples to understand. Now, let us see how and what happens to energy movement in the ecological system of the earth. All the essential processes and systems on the earth surface are determined by solar energy. Both the biotic as well as abiotic components are complementary, dependent on sun for all energy requirements. The main function of the surface environment comprises fundamental life processes, which includes plant growth, food chain, reproduction, and sustaining the ecosystem. These life processes are based on life support mechanism of water cycle, soil formation, and the nutrient flows. All these processes are influenced by this solar energy. So, let us now see what is available to this earth. The incoming solar radiation entering the earth's atmosphere is not fully received by earth. At this point, about 35% is pushed back to the space by the reflection due to clouds, other gas molecules and particles present in the air. From the surface of the earth, water, ice and snow etc. also reflect about 4% of the radiation. Finally, Earth's environment is power driven by 65% of the total solar energy to be contributed to the earth, and it is this massive energy that flows through the earth continuously. The process can be seen in figure 5. It is important to know how the solar energy is distributed across the earth's surface. Due to the curved shape of the earth and the other factors such as position of the sun, the solar energy is not evenly distributed over the globe. The polar areas of the planet receives much less than the equatorial zones. It is this pattern of insolation that determines the biotic as well as the abiotic components, which includes plants, animals, climate, soil and other elements of our physical environment. Measured in millions of kilocalories of solar energy per year, the higher latitudes receive 60 million kilocalories of solar energy. The middle latitudes receive around 80 to 120 million kilocalories per year. The highest values of 180 to 220 million kilocalories per year are found in subtropics between 20 to 30 degrees of latitude. Along the equator, it is 120 to 160 million kilocalories a year. This difference is the value. This difference is the value of equator This difference in the values of equator and subtropics is because of heavy cloud covers near equator which reflect the incoming radiation. There is a process to sustain a long-term energy balance on the surface of the earth by the auto-generated redistribution of energy. The energy is redistributed by circulation of the atmosphere and oceans. From the higher latitudes, cooler air and cold ocean currents move towards equator to cool lower latitudes. From the tropics, heat is transported towards poles by global circulation of air and warm ocean currents to warm higher latitude regions. This complete circulation can be seen how it is happening over the surface of the earth, and it is illustrated in figure 6. Now, let us see what happens to this available energy. The solar energy available to the earth is stored in its environment, and it is always in the process of transformation from one form to another, particularly heat and chemical compounds. This energy passes through the ecosystem and follows two different courses of heat and organic energy. Let us see the two paths of energy. The first path says geophysical path, and ecosystem. This path begins when the solar energy is received, reflected back to the space, absorbed and transformed to heat by the atmosphere and by the surface layer of the ocean and the continents. The environment becomes a transitory reservoir for this converted heat, and it is accumulated here for a short time. It is witnessed that more than 99% of the solar energy goes through the heat path. This heat is responsible for all physical and chemical processes and systems that are functioning on the surface of the earth. It is these systems which transform heat energy into other types of energy, such as kinetic energy in the form of various movements and circulation systems of wind and water, or the potential energy as seen in the mass of snow or precipitation. These processes comprise the surface and atmospheric circulation system, which implies the formation of pressure cells, planetary wind system and upper air motion. The exchange of phosphorus and nitrogen through air, soil and water through nutrient system or cycle. From the initial point of evaporation through its various forms as clouds and different precipitations, cycling of water happens between surface and atmosphere. This is called hydrological cycle. This is very important to know the immense vitality of the journey of energy in the organic path. The relationship between formation and breaking down of the organic matter and storing and releasing energy are important roots. The organic path begins with the vital process of photosynthesis, where producers, the green plants, does a massive conversion of energy from solar radiation to prepare high potential energy, which is organic molecules for their bodies from raw material which is available in the environment, that is carbon dioxide, water and other elements. The green pigment chlorophyll in the green plants absorb the light energy from the sun and makes this huge task of energy transformation possible. This organic path makes use of only 1% of solar energy available, but the whole biological system or the existence of life on the earth is possible owing to this energy conversion. The energy flow in the ecosystem is the movement of energy through a system from external sources through a series of organisms, and biosphere gives up all the chemical energies in the ecosystem to the atmosphere as heat. Chemical energy is stored in the form of organic deposits in the soil and rock formation that represents topsoil and fossil fuels. This organic matter is used as a source of energy in homes, industries and automobiles. In the process, it is transformed into heat, and along with other chemicals, these compounds are released into the atmosphere. In the sequence of this flow, only a small fraction of energy is used for the production of new growth and reproduction at each trophic level of the food chain. Most of it is used as body respiration and maintenance. The producers and consumers in the ecosystem can be classified into various feeding groups, each known as trophic level. A particular position occupied by a group of organisms in a food chain is known as trophic level. For example, primary producers, primary consumers, secondary consumer or tertiary consumers. Heterotrophics acquire their energy by consuming herbivores. Carnivores and other higher order consumers feed on herbivores, and detrivores feed on the generated waste. The food chains are structured in 3 to 5 levels of energy conversions, referred as trophic levels, and each of the trophic level illustrate a particular function in the ecosystem. Integrated food chains are called food webs. The different trophic levels include: number 1, producers. The absorption of light energy and its conversion into stored chemical energy by autotrophs, the green plants, provide ecosystem with its primary energy source at the base of food chain. Plants are gateways to the sun's energy to the entire ecosystem. The organic compound manufactured by plants is passed on to other organisms through the food chain, in which series of consumers are dependent on each other. Food chain is the sequence of organisms depends upon each other as source of food. Organisms that consume plant material synthesizes portions of this in their own bodies, becomes flesh of plant eating animals, which further provides nutrition to other animals. Along this chain, energy keeps flowing in the ecosystem from one organism to another. This is clearly illustrated as the components of ecosystem. Since plants set table for all other biotic components of the ecosystem, which comprises the herbivores, carnivores, the other higher order consumers and decomposers. As they create the new organic matter for the ecosystem, the plants are called primary producers. The total amount of energy converted into organic matter is called gross primary production. From this gross primary production, some energy plants use for their own maintenance, and rest is known as NPP, net primary production. Therefore, NPP implies the pace at which new organic matter is available to the consumers in the new ecosystem. The total NPP of the ecosystem provides energy base utilized by non-photosynthetic heterotrophic organisms. The trophic level 2, that is consumers. Consumers need energy to synthesize all the molecules required for growth, maintenance and repair of the body. The release of potential energy contained in organic molecule is needed by organisms to carry out the activities in vital points of cell respiration. Organic molecules are broken down in the cell respiration process. In the process, oxygen is absorbed and carbon dioxide is released as a byproduct. At this trophic level, the primary consumers or herbivores make up the second level in the feeding chain. These include cattle and all the other plant-eating organisms, followed by carnivores or secondary consumers include meat eaters such as snake, cat, lions, etc. The tertiary consumers are fourth level, for example, hawks and eagles are among this group that eat other carnivores. Omnivores such as human, monkeys, raccoons and black bears function as both carnivores and herbivores. The energy conversions involved in the body's use of potential energy from glucose are not completely efficient as per the law of thermodynamics. Substantial heat is produced as waste, which becomes the source of body heat. Cold-blooded and warm-blooded animals' body heat is measurable. The organic substance eaten by consumers, about 60% of the food is oxidized for energy and waste is released to the environment. Nearly 10% is converted to the body tissue growth, maintenance and repair, and the undigested goes as a fecal waste. This process is known as secondary production. It is important to understand here that small portions of food which becomes body tissue of the consumer is the only energy which is available as food to the next organisms in the food chain. The third category, that is the decomposers. They are heterotrophic organisms that feed on dead organic material, fecal waste, dead organic material and fecal waste. Detritivores are organisms that live on the refuse of the ecosystem. They include scavengers like vulture, worms and crab that feed on dead remains, and decomposers as fungi, bacteria and protozoa that feed on dead organic matter. And eventually, the waste products of the final line of decomposition are mineral nutrients which are reabsorbed by the soil, which is important for primary producers and thus recycled by plants back to the ecosystem. The next we will talk about energy flow and its efficiency. The common ecological measure of efficiency is seen at trophic level. It is the ratio of production at one trophic to that of the next level. The ecosystems integrate both biotic, that comprises the producers, consumers and decomposers, the abiotics such as solar radiation, soil, water, air and heat. Ecosystems are energy systems that includes numerous food chains and food webs, connecting the enormous number of organisms with their environment. The energy passes through the categorized various feeding levels, and in the transformation of energy, most of it goes as heat in the respiration. It is estimated that there is loss of about 90% of energy as it moves from one level to another. Therefore, the efficiency of energy transfer is only 10%. Thus, energy budget of an ecosystem declines with each energy conversion, and the available energy at higher trophic level becomes too small. The law of thermodynamics says that there is actually no energy be lost, but entropy increases the most of energy, and most of energy degrades and not available for any further conversion because of the innumerable energy conversions among the various trophic activities. Energy flow between trophic levels represent the sum of feeding performances of many species and communities. This entire process of energy transformation explains that energy flow is unidirectional through the ecosystem and it is not recycled, rather it is to be replenished by the solar radiation. The flow of energy through food chain depends on the efficiency with which organisms consume their food resources and convert them into biomass. This is called trophic level efficiency or ecological efficiency, which depends on two types of factors: the limitations of the availability of basic resources for photosynthesis and disturbances due to the external relationships to the environment. Fundamental biological rule of the principles of limiting factor clearly indicates that for a maximum photosynthesis, the ingredients such as light, heat, water, carbon dioxide and nutrients shall be available at a certain level. And if any factor is short supply for the photosynthesis, then it is considered limited by the one factor value, or an excessive quantity of any factor might also prove to be a limiting factor. For example, any kind of pollution in the atmosphere or water shall become limiting factor for the particular ecosystem. Thus, there are optimum conditions for an organism. Low and high limiting factors create a condition of tolerance threshold, and many becomes acute if the conditions are not corrected, where the survival is at stake. The disturbances from the external environment include sudden events of flood, storms, droughts, etc. These situations disrupts the flow of basic components of the photosynthesis. For example, extreme soil erosion will reduce availability of nutrients or physical damage of plant foliage due to storms. Ecosystems are in state of incessant adjustments with these sudden and progressive changes. As seen from the figure 8, it is evident that at primary producers level, 8,863 kilocalories meter square 8,863 kilocalories per meter square per year energy reduces greatly as it moves up to the trophic ladder to only 6 kilocalories per meter square per year, which is less than 0.67%. The ecological efficiency can also be seen with respect to climatic limitations. For example, the environments with no limitations, which includes the tropical areas with an annual average output of 2,200 grams of organic output per square meter. This is followed by the environments of seasonal limitations like mid-latitude zones with the annual average of organic output of 600 to 1200 grams per square meter. The others are environments with permanent limitations such as the arid and Arctic or the polar regions with only 5 to 90 grams per square meter of annual average. Similarly, aquatic ecosystems also show variations in energy depending upon the depth of oceans. But besides these natural limiting factors, it has been witnessed that human intervention is adding complexity to the ecosystems of the earth. The energy flow efficiency of the ecosystem faces indirect losses due to various anthropogenic actions of deforestation, overgrazing and pollution, etc. The overall trend in historical progression has been towards enhanced magnitude and frequency of disturbances by human as the numbers, resource exploitation, and expanding occupancy of land and marine areas of the planet are increased by many folds. The measurements of energy flow through the entire community is very complex. The total input of solar energy and the efficiency of its transformation at each level determines the basic trophic structure. The number of trophic levels, the intricacies of the food webs, and the annual rate of production of organic matter is of vital significance to the sustenance of the ecosystem. So, that is all for today. I hope you enjoyed the discussion and found the episode fruitful. Thanks for visiting and watching. Goodbye.